Hello, this is Tom at Team Binge Podcast here for part 2 of Season 3, Episode 11 of Ted Lasso called Mom City. Enjoy.
We have a funny callback in the hotel with Ted where Keely is on the hotel TV talking about all of the advances in gym equipment. She's like, yoga mats. Yeah. Ted gets this. I think this whole scene is just so we can get this text from his mom saying, I kind of wish I went to the game so that now he feels guilty, which, I understood this completely, and I think it's completely normal. It's game time. We've got some Rebecca, Higgins, and Keely talking in the stands, and we find out that Rebecca's father went to school with Freddie Mercury. Is that right?
Yeah, I like the idea of like the crowd is chanting Blue Moon, which is obviously a very famous old song, but a lot of fans will use like old school songs and kind of make it a club anthem. So they get this back and forth with them trying to do Fat Bottom Girls to be their club anthem, because I guess Freddie Mercury owned the team back in the 80s.
Sure.
And I appreciate that Higgins says like, oh, were too many people offended? Yeah, just the flat bottomed girls.
It was a solid joke. I appreciated it. Higgins got to act in this episode, that's for sure. He gets to be a statue in not too long. Jamie walks out and gets a homecoming booing, I think is the phrase. Nate is watching the game in the restaurant, and he is cheering for Richmond. We find some great soccer playing by Jamie Tart. Are you still sold on the soccer playing of the show in terms of, do these guys, I mean, they look like they're playing at about half speed, but you feel comfortable with the footwork of one Jamie Tart?
Yeah, I think, Jamie, the actor Phil Dunster, definitely has some moves. I think he's a bigger guy, I think, in this episode than he has been in, or not this episode, excuse me, but this season. I feel like he was like kind of like a...
No. Season 2, you're right. I feel like his arc has taken a much bigger spot in the show. In Season 2, he would just pop in every once in a while. So it is good. I guess I was just commenting on his... fleet of foot and soccer work, and is he putting the ball on frame, I think is what they say, right? Ball
we get
on
loads
frame?
of soccer in this bit, right? Like there's lots of it, lots of saves from Van Damme, and like a lot of ball movement. So
guy's a wall. Although he's a living, breathing human, I can see him right there. I love how literal the announcers get.
Yeah.
Higgins, once Jamie assists and they score, I think it's Cullen that scores. Higgins decides that if he moves, he will jinx it. So Higgins becomes a statue. And we see Pep. What's Pep's name, Tom? He's a real guy, right?
Yes. Do you remember his last name? I want you to give his last name a try.
Pep Pepperoni, I believe, is his full name. His middle name is Sausage. Pep Sausage Pepperoni. That wouldn't make sense.
Pep Guardiola. So he is the famous
that's pretty
Man City
close.
coach.
I was actually a lot closer than I thought when I said pepperoni.
You can call him Pep Gorgonzola.
Hey, not bad. Although I hate Gorgonzola. Pep's making some adjustments. They let Pep act a little bit in this episode, which was kind of fun. And I gotta say, not half bad. Half bad. The big thing here is Man City is physically beating up Tart, and we have the one dumb fan in the stands. I like that the show feels the need to do this. They're like, all right, we're going to give them one fan who's going to shout things, and that's going to be the personification of... I guess they didn't want to pay all the other people, all the other actors in the stands. They just wanted to pay this one guy.
It's like they needed to... make a villain of him, and then like at the very end when like he turns, like, okay, well this fan turns, so it's okay for everybody else to turn. Like he's just there as a placeholder for the entire stands.
Right. All I thought about was like, oh, hey, there's the former GM of the Arizona Cardinals hanging out at a different football game, probably ruining their team as well. So they are up one score, and then we're in like minute 80, right? And they're defending against the equalizer. And we have a very cool moment where Jamie is like, gets his foot behind the ball in order to save it. Listen, I don't care about anything now about the show other than the soccer of it all. I just love the sports of it all. And that's what drew me in, from not the forgiveness or the positivity or any of that stuff. Just give me all of the sport. But Jamie does a cool save where he helps Van Damme, but in the process injures himself. And then the fan stands up and shouts some sort of slur, and Isaac runs into the stands. Is that... Did we
No,
get
you're
similar
melding
vibes?
episodes.
I know I'm melding episodes, but I felt like they brought that same fan back, and I was just waiting for him to say something terrible again.
Yes, fact.
But anyways, Jamie's down, and I honestly thought they were going to kill Jamie. Just the way everyone was reacting, I was like, "Oh, Jamie's going to die. He's going to throw.
Style.
He's going to throw a clot, and he's just going to go down." And I don't. Everyone should check for clots. I don't think it's something to joke about, but yeah, I really thought Jamie was going to throw a clot and just die.
I mean, it is a classic soccer player thing to be injured and then just kind of hang on the ground for a while, especially for a team that is winning the game. Like the idea of Jamie wanting to get off the field, like you milk that for as long as you can. You got to milk those precious minutes off that clock.
Oh, milk it like a cow, buddy. Milk it like a Kansas cow. Nate's watching intently. I did find the conversation, we'll talk about it a little bit later, where he's like, "Oh, is it because I'm watching too much TV? Is that why you're firing me?" And Derek's like, "No,
Yeah.
You're like our best worker." But Nate does spend a lot of time watching the television. Ted runs over to him on the sideline because they want to sub him out. In soccer rules, Tom, let's get this right. As soon as you sub a player out, they cannot go back into the game, right? So you're either playing down and Jamie goes back in when he's ready, or you sub him out and he does not go back into the game at all. Am I correct?
Correct.
And that's regardless of half, right? Even if
Yes.
if someone's pulled in the first half, they cannot come back in the second half.
True.
Can they come back in stoppage time?
They cannot. They changed a lot of rules. Like it used to always be you can only have 3 subs the entire game, and the same rule. Like once you get out, you cannot go back in. But I think they increased it to like either 5 or 6. And there are some rules. I mean, in normal Premier League play, you don't play extra time, so it doesn't matter. But in like World Cup play, things like that, they'll give guys like extra subs if it goes into extra time.
Okay. Can you sub in during penalty kicks?
No, you have to have been on the field when time expired.
Can you sub in during corner kicks?
Yes.
Can you sub in? We've literally reached the end of my soccer knowledge. I was trying to
You're pretty
use
good.
as many.
3 seasons in.
Really? I have, I
Yeah.
think, 4 things. Thank you, Tom. You're the
That's 4 more things than you had at the beginning of our Ted Lasso journey.
That's true. Oh, what a journey it's been. What a long and arduous journey it's been. Anyways, Ted goes over to Jamie. He's like, "Hey, are you going to be okay?" And Ted, in dramatic coach fashion, is like, "No, we play with 10 until Jamie's ready." This was insane, right? Would this happen? Does this happen?
It's not that insane. This kind of happened. I think he even turns over to like Pep, who sees him. He's like, "Oh wow, you're actually not going to sub him out," kind of a deal. Like it's a game recognizes game. So this does happen, especially for a star player like Jamie, because he is on a tear right now and they do need him. I would argue there's only 5-10 minutes left in this game, so you probably could sub somebody else in that has fresh legs and can probably do the job because they don't need another goal. But it ultimately ends up working.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And it only works because Van Damme is putting on an absolute clinic in goal.
Swashbuckling save from the masked Canadian.
So good.
What's so fantastic about all of this was the idea of Zorro now being called Van Damme, but Zorro wearing a mask.
Yep.
So they make all these references about a masked Van Damme when the idea of a masked Zorro is just sitting right there.
Yep.
It's so good.
That's incredible. Yes, it is. It's so good. Oh, man. We have a quick cut to Derek letting Nate go. He's like, you're my top man. But listen, Jade saw me do some things and she's going to report me and she calls the shots. So you're going to get sacked. And obviously this is leading to like, you are slumming it here. Go be a coach. We cut back to the sidelines. Roy's like, he can play hurt. I used to play hurt all the time. And Beard's response is, yeah, and now you can't walk upstairs. Which was awesome.
Love that line.
Roy's got a case of the drinker's knees. We have a conversation about Freddy Krueger on the sideline. Tom, I got to say, I don't think I've ever seen a Friday the 13th movie. I don't.
Those are not Friday the 13th. That is Jason. Freddy Krueger is Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay, Tom, I'm going to readjust here. I have not seen Nightmare on Whatever Street or the Friday the 13th. I have seen none of them.
I can't say that wasn't necessarily in my wheelhouse. I wasn't a big horror slasher film guy back when I was a youth when these were very popular, but I certainly understand the reference. I like the idea of like how he had a rough childhood with Ted's lines and how hurt people, but with big long knife hands.
So good. So good. They have a conversation about Jamie's dad, and he's like, listen, if you can't use hate to motivate you, just forgive him. And, it will. I like Jamie's response is like, no, I'm not gonna. He uses some choice language, but some fruity language.
This is like the heart of this episode, right? The idea of like forgiveness being a gift to yourself. Like you're not doing this for your father, you're doing this for yourself. It's a beautiful message.
Yeah, it takes effort to like hold on to a grudge and like stay angry, and like that takes time, energy, and thought. And the idea of like forgiving and letting it go, even though I don't want to, even though I really hate that person for what they did to me. Yeah, it's a good lesson. It is certainly a good lesson.
Julian, do you have some hatred that you need to forgive?
No.
No.
You're
still in the hatred phase?
Yeah, no, I'm still angry. I
Not
will be
until
angry.
You play this guy again in your home city.
No, I will be angry until the good Lord brings me home. All right, Jamie gets up and he's like, I feel great. And Ted's like, it was the talk, wasn't it? And he's like, well, it might have been the painkillers and the adrenaline, but sure. And then I love what Jamie does here. He, much like Stella, he gets his groove back. He goes out there, he starts making faces, he's messing with the crowd, he's tapping his jersey chest thing.
Mm-hmm. He's tapping his badge. He's tapping his Richmond badge.
Okay, that's the thing that soccer players and police officers do, I am assuming. And then Jamie scores, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, scores in very dramatic fashion all by himself, and the commentators make mention of it. And this is something that a lot of players going back to play their ex-team, if they score, he doesn't celebrate. He doesn't go to the corner flag and try to get anything too crazy. He just celebrates the moment with his team. So I appreciated that, and I think that helps with kind of the churn of the crowd.
Dom, did this remind you of those times when you're playing Rocket League with me and I'm scoring all those goals and I'm not screaming, me, after winning because I'm humble and I've been there before, and scoring is just something that I can do almost at will during Rocket League? Did this remind you of me on the Rocket League machine?
Oh man, it did not, but I'm so glad you brought that up because you are a fantastic player, man. And when you scored that one goal, it was great.
That one goal in 20 games. Ooh, Rocket League's hard. Anyways, you gotta drive a car. They clinch the win with that goal, and this is then where they pull Jamie. And once again, it was so dramatic. I was like, Jamie's gonna die. He scored the goal. He clinched the win. He's going to die. And then the City fans start to clap. Tom, does this make any soccer sense? In the real world, would this ever happen? He literally scored the goal to put the game away. They sub him out. Even though he's a former player, would they cheer for him? Explain.
I mean, it happens. I don't think it probably happens as quickly as it does here, because the fans were just giving him crap the entire game, and then they all turn on him. But I think this does generally happen in sports, especially in English soccer. And I think this is where I was kind of mentioning earlier with the kids ribbing on him. I feel like that's just kind of part of the culture of soccer, is ribbing on a player that maybe used to play for you or that you're playing against. But at the end of the day, you don't really mean it. You still appreciate and are a fan of what he did for you when he was at the club and everything else. So, I mean, I think we saw it with Roy as well, right? He went back to Chelsea and all those fans were chanting for him because even though he's not for Chelsea anymore, the fans still respect everything that he did and gave to the club. So, but Jamie's different, right? Because Jamie only played for Man City for a season and then left for a reality TV show. But I think the bigger idea here is that Jamie is from Manchester. He is a Mancunian. So he gets a little bit more love from these fans that maybe others wouldn't.
Sure. I'm going to pretend like I know what that term means. Man.
I feel like that was a callback too, right? They made a couple mentions of them being called Mancurians because I think in previous episodes, Beard and Ted tried to figure out what a Manchesterite was called or something.
Is that really the term? Mancurian? Is that what
Yeah,
they're
they
called?
said it a couple times throughout the episode. Yeah, I think the announcer said it. Ted said it when he corrected like his mom.
As he's leaving the fields, Roy whispers deep in his ear, and I'm sure you wished that you could hear what was whispered because you love whispering.
Well, this again is another Keeley thing to me. Like, he whispers something into his ear, and I think he's very clearly saying something. Like, and it cuts to Keeley when he's whispering to his ear. Like, it's a very odd cut for that to happen. So it's almost like Roy said, like, hey, Keeley and I are not a thing. Like, if you want to pursue it. That's the only thing I can get from this conversation, but it seems like a very weird time for Roy to have this conversation with him.
I agree.
But we have to get something in this finale about what he said to him.
I think he said, hey, when you're icing your leg, I'm going to get 2 bottles of champagne. You, Keeley, I are going to get drunk in the athletic room later. By the way, your tag is showing. Let me tuck it in for you. That's what I think he said.
Okay.
The dad's friends, Jamie's dad's friends, cheers him with their little flasks, or medium-sized flasks. Mm-hmm. And I was like, is the dad dead? And I went to write this in the notes as I was watching, and I might have said something out loud, and my wife was like, no, I think he's in rehab. And I was like, wow, you really jumped to that conclusion. No, I think he's dead. And she goes, no, they just showed him in rehab. And I was like, what? And then I rewound it, and she's like, you didn't go far enough. And then I rewound it, and she's like, nope, you did not go far enough. And then I rewound it further, and sure enough, the dad was in rehab, not dead the whole time, much like those Christopher Nolan movies.
I like this was a beautiful turn. Like, when I first saw it, and I saw this in real time, I had the same thought. I'm like, oh no, does his dad pass? But the idea of even his dad kind of getting a redeeming arc, and we don't need anything more from this, but the idea that the dad's trying to be better, I think was a beautiful touch.
Sure. And I think it goes along with a bit of the theme of the show where it's like, although I think they go heavy on villainy sometimes, it does show like no one's a pure villain. Like, you can't just say, and I think this is maybe a pet peeve of mine, is we are often like, oh, that person is just like evil or that person is bad. And you're like, I don't think anyone is like, purely evil. Like, they don't spend their whole day being like, oh, how am I going to ruin everyone's lives around me? Because that would be a terrible existence. Who would be friends with that person? Not me, right? Probably, maybe, who knows? Anyways, so I do like the show points out, like, sometimes Rupert is not the worst. Like, Jamie's dad here, not the worst. Like, there's some redeeming qualities. We're not all, even though they tried to make Nate for like half a second Darth Vader, they were like, oh yeah, remember, Nate still got some good in him. So I do appreciate the reminder of people can change, and not everyone is just there to be a caricature of being a villain. If that makes sense. But
yeah, for sure.
Pep gives Ted his own life advice about wins and losses and making men better, which I thought Pep did a great job.
Yeah, I think Pep as an actor was fantastic in this little scene. It kind of does what managers do at the end of the game, shakes hand and kind of, says, hey, good game. I don't know if I like this bit of like giving Pep the Ted Lasso way kind of thing about like wins and losses. Like, no, man, like, you're a world-renowned famous soccer coach that is all about wins and losses. I don't know the guy's backstory. Maybe this is kind of part of his Lasso way, and Ted Lasso is based off of Pep. But I didn't like how they gave Pep this line, like it was more his idea and not something that Ted had brought this philosophy to the team.
Okay, interesting. Here's how I like to see it going down. Are you ready, Tom?
Yep.
Pep did something wrong, and he was sentenced to, I don't know, community service. And the magistrate and the funny wig that was in the dock, no, Pep would have been in the dock, and the magistrate would have been talking to him. The magistrate was like, listen, you don't have to do any jail time if you go and give a positive message to all the children out there. And Pep was like, done. And so he got a spot on this show in order to do it. community service done, and now Pep can go back to being a terrible person that only cares about wins and losses because he did his one good deed. That's how I like to think what happened.
Listen, I don't know. I've never read up on the guy, so you could be right.
I am right, and his other option was to pick trash on the highway in one of those fluorescent vests, and he said, I am Pep, I will not pick up trash. And then he littered, and then he went right back to jail.
Get me Will Trent, ABC Tuesday.
I don't even know where he is.
Will Trent is back.
You thought you could hide forever? Time to come home.
The series that's being called one of the best network procedurals.
We're going to solve this case.
Featuring new cast member Gina Rodriguez.
I'm a prosecutor. We deal in truth and facts.
Maybe everybody should try that, huh?
Will Trent, the 2-part season premiere, begins Tuesday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
All right, we're in Richmond. Fat Bottom Girls is playing. There were a couple of times that a song played during this episode, and I was like, is this Queen? And still not quite sure, but I know this song is Freddie Mercury and Queen, right?
This is definitely Queen. There was another song that definitely sounded familiar. It kind of made me think like, oh, they got another Queen song, but it was not. It was just somebody kind of similar sounding to their vibe.
Okay, well then that was the song I thought, and now I know I was wrong, so that feels good. Jamie gives everyone props as they're leaving the locker room. He then, I believe at this point, texts his father. And Beard talks about going to karaoke, as one does after a big win. And they're going to sing Islands in the Stream. Which, when they started like humming or singing it, I knew the song. But if you told me, hey, do you know the song Islands in the Stream? I would tell you no. But then someone in my house that was watching this with me started singing it, and I was like, oh, I kind of remember that song.
Dude, this is Michael Scott and Jim Halpert duet.
Okay, that's the only reason why I know this song. And that's what I recognize. I was like, oh, okay, I know when they do this song in The Office. I would not know this song outside of it.
Oh, okay.
And that's not me being proud. That's me being sad.
I had heard of it. I couldn't give you all the lyrics, but I had heard of the song before. I think it was remade in that movie called Bulworth. I think there was a Maya song where they used like that riff. It was completely different lyrics, like a rap version for that movie. This is a weird reference. I think I have all that
Tom,
right.
You're all over the place, and I cannot confirm or deny any of it.
Okay.
I don't even... If you told me there was a movie not made Bulworth or named Bulworth, I would not be able to tell you one way or the other, because I certainly did not see it.
Oh, the internet will tell me.
You can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com with your questions or concerns. Tell Tom he's right, because he is a good man.
Oh, it's Ghetto Superstar. That was the song.
Okay.
Do you remember Ghetto Superstar?
I mean, you have heard the phrase before.
Okay.
It's been shouted at me as I've walked down streets before. But we've got a lot of fans, so it's okay. Ted is watching the security footage of where Nate rips the poster. He plays this, and he's laughing, and he's showing it to Beard. And it is of Nate getting stuck in the office after ripping the poster. He's got to like hide under the desk for hours and hours and hours and then sneak out a window. And obviously it's funny, and I know his ultimate point for showing it to Beard, but what vibe did you get from this?
I mean, yeah, I was confused too. I'm like, was he trying to give sympathy for Nate that he had to see here for so long? Is it the idea that Nate is just so dedicated, he's going to sit here for this many hours? Like, I don't know what he was really trying to, or what the show is trying to elicit with this bit. I get the end game of it, of Ted trying to almost make Beard feel guilty as he's kind of like humming the song as he leaves and all that jazz. But I feel like they could have gone another route with that.
Yeah, I don't know that watching Nate suffer by hiding under the desk was really what would bring Beard around. But I do like what Ted is ultimately doing here. And he has a great quote where he says, you know, I hope we're not judged by the actions of our weakest moments, but rather by the strengths we show when and if we're given a second chance, which is extremely powerful based on Beard's backstory, which we learn in a scene or two. And I love there is a There is a part earlier in the show where something happens and Ted gives a long fudge. And then right here, as Ted does this to Beard, and Beard knows what Ted's doing in terms of wanting him to give Nate a second chance, Beard looks up and goes, fudge. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful callback.
I think Beard does a real thing, though.
Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry. I just heard fudge in my brain. We have Jamie texting his dad. This is where he does that. And then Roy and Keeley join him in the training room. And he is getting a foot ice bath because he's been wounded. And I love how Roy casually drops the champagne in the ice bucket. And
breaks 3 of his toes.
And ruins a nice bottle of Brut. A wonderful year, 2020. The best champagne year, some people say. Best year just all around, I guess most people would say.
Ooh, too soon.
Too soon. Jade and Nate are meeting in the kitchen where Nate has decided that he has written a 60-page apology letter. Listen, I've written a fair bit in my life, Tom, not professionally. 60 pages would take you forever. Forever. Like, just the typing involved. I can't.
Well, you type terrible. Like 4 words a minute. So, I mean, Nate seems like he's like a
wunderkid.
60, 70. Yeah, exactly. He's a wunderkid, man. But yeah, he's looking for a few trims. But yeah, seeing a 60-page apology letter kind of reminded me of one of our podcast outlines.
Oof. Yeah, speaking of which, hour and 12-minute episode gets 5 pages of outline. Boo. Boo, says the audience. Beard shows up.
Very much like Kruger style.
Yeah, we get a buzz. Tom, have you ever lived somewhere where you had to buzz people up or they buzzed you in order to let them in? Have you ever been in that situation?
I have not, no. You?
My only experience is on Seinfeld. I've never, the whole buzzing up system seems crazy. I think I've talked about this before. I feel like intercom systems in houses was a big thing, I don't know, in the 90s. And then they all went into disrepair. So I can remember being at people's houses where they had like an intercom system and none of them ever worked. Never worked. It always seemed like a lovely novelty that, much like a hot tub, lasted probably 6 months and then never got used and fell into disrepair until someone came and picked it up to go send it to the dump. But I digress. He gets buzzed in, and we find out the backstory of Beard and Ted. Let's go into this, and then I'd love to get your impression. So we find out that they met in school. One of them was the backup punter. One of them was the backup kicker. They spent a lot of time working out together. After school, they kind of went separate ways, and then Beard wound up in prison. When he got out, Ted took him in. He then stole Ted's car. This was a great call by Nate where he's like, this sounds a lot like Les Mis. Which, do you know the story of Les Mis, Tom?
I know. I have never seen the movies, the plays, or the Vegas show.
Okay. We open up. It's the late 1700s.
Oh boy.
It's revolutionary, and I will do all the French parts in France. No, the joke here is he goes, yes, it's like Les Mis. I stole a loaf of meth, which there is a guy who steals a loaf of bread and goes to prison for a very long time. Anyways, Les Mis, you should watch that movie. It's an incredible movie. Hugh Jackman, Russell Crowe, Anne Hathaway. Our girl Anne Hathaway from Colossal. Do you remember the famous movie Colossal that everyone watched with us?
I do. Yeah, we recorded a pod on it. Go back and check our catalog.
Jason Sudeikis and Anne Hathaway, Colossal. Weird movie. Have fun. Anyways, we have not gotten any of their backstory, right? We just assume they're old friends. Were you surprised by this at all? Or did you like where they took this?
So I'll admit, like, this scene, watching it the second time, hit me a lot more than the first. And I don't know if I was because I was digesting everything or just I've kind of given up on the Nate arc kind of stuff. But watching it the second time, like, I loved this. I loved the backstory it gave for Beard. I think it fills in so many gaps that we've had about what their relationship, him and Ted's, has been. I thought it was great. I thought it was poetic. I thought it was beautiful and was a great way for kind of Beard to give the apology and for us as an audience to forgive Nate.
Right. Yeah. The forgiveness part is huge here because Beard steals Ted's car, and then the only reason he doesn't go back to prison or get in trouble more is because Ted vouches for him and says, hey, I gave him the car, which very much, when you watch Les Mis, you're going to be like, oh, this reeks of Lasso. Anyways, this got me. One watch, it got me. I had a real emotional reaction to this because just the power of forgiveness, and even when it's difficult, what Beard does here and him welcoming Nate back was wonderful. And then we see the satisfaction of Jade eating a kebab. Jade's like, someone didn't pick up the delivery. Free food. Wonderful. But yeah, this they got me twice here. They got me with this one. And then this rolls right into the next powerful scene of Ted and Dottie, him having a discussion. And it starts with him thanking her for like all the nice small stuff that she does, and then him going right into a hard F-bomb about not talking to him about the big stuff, like losing dad when he was younger. And
Well, I think he also mentions too, not just losing dad, but like seeking help for herself. Like she didn't like seek a therapist or seek other help. She tried to deal with it all herself.
This is not how I would have verbalized this, but I see what they're doing, and it certainly has the impact. And once again, communication, the importance of it, and sometimes bottling up feelings, despite the fact that the house words are, we suffer silently, and I stand by those house words. I feel like this scene is maybe a good reminder that every once in a while, it's okay to express yourself in terms of deep and meaningful things. So
With F-bombs.
With F-bombs. Not at your mom, though, because then she'll wash your mouth out with soap, even though you're in your late 30s and everything's going gray. Anyways, his mother does apologize. And to her point, she's like, listen, I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know how to handle this. I did the best that I could. And it doesn't sound like he had a terrible childhood, but you can, the show is making some correlations with how Ted handles things based on how his mom handled things, and hiding the big stuff, and just as long as the small pleasantries are there, we can hide the big stuff. So I this scene got me. This scene got me because the kicker here is she says, I do have something to say to you. Your son misses you. And that was like, she got to a point where rather than dance around why she's visiting, why she's there, it's like, hey, your son needs you. And that I thought was very powerful.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think the same thing, like when I watched it again, it hit me a lot harder than it did the first watch. And I think I was taken out of it with just all the F-bombs that were kind of being dropped. It just seemed a little bit too hardcore for Ted. But I mean, I love the way Jason Sudeikis acts this out, and like his reaction to like, your son misses you, I thought was just beautiful and so well done. Like the idea of him being, I guess, scared to get too close because he knows that his son is going to leave him. Like he's just kind of has all these emotions kind of bottled up. And it was a beautiful scene. And I loved what they did.
Yeah, to your point, I think like Ted himself is not a big swearer. So I do understand they use that for like dramatic effect. I think they still could have done this without, because you're right. It does kind of like when he drops that first one, not that you or I are opposed to like swearing when it's necessary, but when he drops that first one, it is kind of like such a shock. And I do feel like out of character, but maybe that's what we're supposed to understand. This is Ted digging deep, expressing himself.
Yeah, that's fair. I like the mom's last line.
A hard fudge maybe would have, or a sassafras maybe, really would have hit just as well, but who knows?
We'll see this censored on TV. Forget you, Mom.
Oh, I love the old doves. I love it.
But I love the bit we get at the end with the mom, kind of like, hey, listen, sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but mostly we just tie. And as a parent of a child of 4 years old, like I feel like he's only 4 and I've got a lot of parenting still to do, but I mean, I feel like that's so true. Like we do the best we can, but the idea that you just got to keep playing. And I think we said this from the beginning, like Ted left his young son alone because his wife needed space, and he goes across an entire ocean and he hasn't been there for his son, and we never really understood why he did this and why he is not a part of his son's life. And then the more we've kind of seen throughout this, it's showing Ted that like he needs to be here. He can't keep running away from this.
I agree. Crazy idea that he is not near Henry, but I think he's going to be in one episode, Tom.
Fact.
We go from that very powerful scene to the most powerful scene, where Rebecca opens her door, and who is outside but Bex and a woman we've never seen and don't know who she is, and they need advice.
Yeah, so this is the assistant, right? Rupert's assistant. So I don't know what we'll get in this final episode, but I mean, clearly this has to be something with why Nate left, and she was probably involved in some sort of harassment thing. So I'm assuming what they'll do is just use this to bring down Rupert, who has been, you know, your point earlier, like there's no real pure villains, but they have made Rupert a pure villain.
I am going to assume that this will be the second throuple. So the show will end with two thruples. There will be Roy, Jamie, and Keeley, and then this throuple will be Rebecca, Bex, which is confusing because Rebecca is going to tell them, hey, my nickname is also Bex, but spelled with a C. So it's going to be Bex, and the assistant, who is nameless, and then they are going to raise Diana, the child. And so Rebecca will now be a mom. I'm sorry, Bex, Becca, nope, Bex, and assistant will all be moms raising Diana. So that's how I predict the show will end.
I mean, I don't really, I guess, think about this, but I mean, we don't need it to happen, but the show has given us the psychic prediction of Rebecca being a mom, and like the only other kid we've kind of seen has been Diana here. Like, is she going to adopt or like?
No. She'll win it in the harassment lawsuit. She'll win the child in the harassment
She'll win
lawsuit.
the child? But
Yes.
Bex isn't a bad mom.
No.
we've
But
seen.
I mean, English court is different than our court, Tom. You can win
okay.
children. That's what Oliver
Wow.
Twist is all about, and so is Great Expectations. It's winning children in court. So,
Gotcha.
also Miracle on 34th Street. They win a child in court and make the kid work for Santa, if I'm remembering that correctly. Ted's mom.
I don't read very often.
No. These were all movies. The Count of Monte Cristo also wins a child in court. Anyways, Ted's mom leaves some sunflower bread. Tom, what are your thoughts on sunflower bread?
I don't even know that sunflower bread was a thing, and I can't imagine it tastes fantastic, but it says that it's Ted's favorite, and I like the callback to the sunflower bit, it being the state flower of Kansas. It's poetic for sure, but I also appreciate that she doesn't say goodbye in person, kind of with this note, which is what Dr. Sharon did, right? When Ted got really upset that she left a note, and now his mom is doing the same. So maybe that's why he got so upset, because that's kind of his mom's MO as well.
Sure. I'm glad you asked. Yeah, my thoughts on sunflower bread are the worst part about it is you need a spit cup for the seeds.
I think you're doing it wrong. I think you're supposed to take them out of the shells.
Nope. Anyways, back at Ted's office, Rebecca is like, hey, let's break the fourth wall. And this is always the episode where we reveal something, or I have a big reveal. In season one, it was that she was like out to get him. That's the only reason she hired him. And in season 2, the big reveal during the penultimate episode is, audience, we'd like you to reach out to us and let us know what it is, because neither Tom and I can remember. So you can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. We should be better at this, but we aren't, and that's fine. Because guess what? In season 3, Rebecca doesn't have the reveal. Ted's I got one. End quote. Tom, what's Ted's reveal going to be? That he's going back home? That was my assumption.
No, that he's confessing his love to Rebecca. Ted Becca, baby.
No. If they do that, I will be absolutely furious. And actually, I'm a little bit furious with this ending because they are purposely messing with the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Because
no, I
the
mean,
show,
it's
here's what I feel like the show knows the world, or like some weird portion of the world wants Ted and Rebecca to like wind up together, and they were like, oh, let's like drive the dagger into their souls and then not let it happen. This is the show playing with that part of the audience, and I think it's unfair, and I don't like it I just don't like it, and I don't think that's what's happening.
No, it's clear as day that he is saying, like, I'm done after this season. I've got to go home. That's going to be what he says. And he even, like, comes into the room, and they make mention that Nate's going to get there at 10 o'clock, and Ted is here meeting with Rebecca at 9:30. So, like, we're probably going to pick up right here on the next episode and then have Nate come in and then them figure out, Nate's going to be the head coach next year or whatever. I don't know. But I thought it was kind of interesting that they did mention the time. But that's going to be what happens for sure.
Okay. So our big prediction is, I don't feel like it's a big prediction, but Ted's going home. Rebecca is going to... Are we going to find out that she's been pregnant this whole time? And that the doctor let her know that? Or are we moving on from her being a mother storyline?
Well, she was just going to see if she was still, like, could have a baby, not necessarily if she was pregnant.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's fair. So that's not a good prediction.
They did, hold on. They did in season 2, the ending, they did like a Lord of the Rings style ending where they said like 3 months later, 4 months later, 6 months later. So I wonder if the show's going to do something like that. Like maybe she does end up with Sam and doesn't have a kid at the end of this, but then we get 2 years later or something, and it's Sam and Rebecca with the kid or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised.
So you think the end game is Sam and Rebecca romantically?
I don't think so. I don't think it should be. But again, like I feel like there needs to be some sort of romantic relationship for Rebecca because the psychic told us that she was going to have a family and she was going to have a kid. So
okay.
I don't like speculating about that in all honesty because I don't think she needs it in her life right now. Like she's in a place where sure she can look for a romantic partner and all that kind of stuff, but do we need to force it into the show with one of these characters we've met? I don't think so.
Okay. Tom doesn't believe in psychics, world. I guess that's something we're revealing. Should we go through each character, Tom, and just make the prediction of what we think, how they're going to end, or should we end this and just go to the finale?
I'm down for doing that. I know this has already been a pretty long pod, so those who have stayed with us, I think we can. I mean, it's always fun to do for a penultimate episode is to talk about where we think our characters are going. So let's do it. So Ted, what's happening? I'm saying he's gone, right?
Back in Kansas. He's coaching, I don't know, D2 college soccer, and he's with Henry, and him and Michelle, we get a little will they, won't they. That's my prediction.
Okay. I bet he's coaching Henry's soccer team.
Okay, that is a good, and Will Ferrell and Dick Butkus are his assistant coaches. I like it. All right, Beard. This is a big question for me. Does Beard stick around at Richmond, or does he follow Ted as one is prone to do as the assistant?
No, Beard stays. I think Beard kind of like needed Ted for a long time, but now that he's met the craziness of his life and love and Jane and the thing that they've already said that they're engaged to be married, my assumption is that like this is Beard separating himself from Ted. Like Ted's given him enough guidance and advice and everything else that he'll stay in jolly old London town. Okay, and Ted's not going to feel bad about that. Beard's not going to feel guilty about it. Ted is going to want him to thrive, and he obviously loves this game called soccer, and so I'm with you. I think he stays as well. Roy, what is happening with Roy? Roy understands that his relationship with Keeley is going nowhere, so he goes to pick up Phoebe at school and marries Miss Bowen on the spot. On the spot. Tom, you and I are so aligned. We should do a podcast together. Not only does he marry Mrs. Bowen, but they start a charter school, and she's the principal, and he's the PE teacher, and the school closes shortly after because suits are filed because he screams at the kids, and the kids are weak. And so they take We're going to get one of those, like, what 90s movies things where it's going to put a freeze frame on the thing and then go to black and white, and then a little text pops on the bottom and says, like, what happened to the characters. Yep. I feel like that's what you just described. School closed due to lawsuit 9 months later. Mrs. Bowen and Roy are still on speaking terms. Principal Bowen and PE teacher Roy are still on speaking terms. No, I think Roy stays on staff. I think yes. Mrs. Bowen, yes. Do you think that's going to happen? Or do you think he's going to stay with Keeley?
I think you've made a good case. I would have said before you made the case you made that Roy and Keeley end up together, but I think you're right. I think we've seen enough from Keeley's like non-committal, like they cut the conversation short, that I don't think that's where this is going to happen. And I think it's okay. I think they'll both be fine without each other, and maybe they're better as friends. But would I be overjoyed if they wound up together? Sure. Would I be underjoyed if they wound up apart? Possibly. Would I be joyed if they were just with other people? Sure. I don't know. I've never experienced joy. One day I'd like to. Where do we end up with Jamie, Tom?
I feel like Jamie and Keeley are kind of like destined for each other. I feel like there's been enough back and forth. Like, I don't think the show's done a fantastic job with it, but they've clearly shown that Jamie still has interest. But Jamie is like kind of keeping himself, I think, away because he sees that there's still some kind of love with Keeley and Roy kind of maybe confessed like, hey, Keeley and I are not together, and maybe that's what he whispered to him, and then they end up. Because I think if you go back and watch this series and you watch that moment when Keeley is ultimately breaking up with Jamie and they're sitting there talking about like how immature Jamie is and how he needs to change. I think this is, if they do end up together, it would be a beautiful arc for Jamie, which we've already said has had a fantastic arc throughout the show, to see him change and to see them end up back up together. And I'm not saying these guys need to be like married by the end of the season, but the idea that they would get back together and go on a date or something, I think would be fitting. Okay.
Jamie, my prediction, is going to have his own reality TV show where it is a chance to date Jamie Tart, and it is a Bachelor-style show where Jamie Tart tries to find his true love. It runs for no less than 17 seasons and ends with him happy, but after like a 3-month engagement, they don't quite work out. So that's my prediction. Goes back to reality TV show. It's very successful. Everyone loves it. You know, season 10's a little bit iffy, but season 17 ends with a real banger and mash, as they say. Okay. Who are we missing? Nate, you think just ends up as the manager of AFC Richmond? Yeah?
I feel like, they put in that rat writing and stuff on the wall. I think that's his arc.
Okay. And then Will remains the kit man for the next 80 years?
No, Will becomes the assistant coach.
Will becomes the assistant coach and is buried in the goal of Richmond 80 years later, which makes it a real doozy when the ball hits his tombstone repeatedly. It's like a home field advantage for Richmond. Who do we miss at this point?
Rebecca? Did we say Rebecca? We didn't give her, we talked about her, but I don't think we ended up on where we think. I don't know. I don't see her. She's certainly not going to leave Richmond. I think she's still going to be the owner. She'll maybe, I don't know where they're going with the relationship with Bex and the assistant and like what that advice that they need. Clearly something with Rupert. I don't know where she ends. I don't think she ends up with Sam. I think that's still my call. I think Sam just ends up being very happy running his restaurant with Ola's, and maybe hits it off with the head chef that's there. So we've seen kind of a relationship budding from those two. Okay,
I think her and Sam end up together, and I think that Bex ends up owning West Ham very quickly. Jan Moss becomes a professor of logic at some weird European school. Danny Rojas becomes the president of Mexico. Cullen becomes a Lamborghini dealership owner of like the 7 biggest Lamborghini dealerships across Europe. And who did I miss out of those? Isaac.
Van Damme?
Oh, Van Damme obviously goes into the movie business, does karate. And then Isaac stays with Richmond his whole career, and in the end beats up a lot of people and goes into UFC. That is my prediction for
Isaac is going to be like the new Roy.
The new Roy, that's exactly right. Did we hit everyone?
I think we hit the main players. There's too many to count at this point. But yeah, those are the main ones. I like it. I think there's enough strings that they've given us to, I wouldn't be surprised of really anything at the end. I'm assuming we're probably going to have like a 3-hour episode for the finale based on the way everything else has been going. But
which means a
I will be
6-hour
bummed.
podcast, Tom.
Yeah, I'll be bummed to see this show go for sure. I think if you look at the next episode title, which I think is like So Long Farewell, it says season finale. So they're not specifically saying series finale, which I think is kind of silly. Like, this is going to be a season or series finale unless they want to do spin-off type stuff where Ted's not heavily involved, but maybe the other players can still kind of move on. And I don't know if I want that to happen. I think like this is a good show. It doesn't need to keep going on. Like, good things can come to an end, and I think this being wrapped up in 3 seasons would be very well done for my taste.
Yeah, the only spinoff I want is Roy, Jamie, Keeley, detective agency, solving the Jack the Ripper crime in London. That's all I want. Every once in a while, everyone else makes a guest appearance as a murder victim. Someone is slowly murdering the former team members of AFC Richmond, the Premier Champion League Richmond from 2023. I almost said 2013. That'll let you know what year I'm living in. Anyways, let's be done with this, Tom. We appreciate all of you that have listened to our rants and raves. We are ending this show, which is where we started, Ted Lasso, and I think it is important to note that the reason we started the show is some of the positive messages that it portrays, and I appreciated this episode, its focus on forgiveness and the power of that, and it reminded me of why we like this show. Even though we've had gripes and complaints, none of them have stopped us from enjoying these characters. And big shout out to Jamie Tartt's character. I think in season 1 we all hated him, and now we all love him, and they did a fabulous job there. So if you have questions or concerns, you can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. I want to say a big thank you to all of you that have rated and reviewed us on Apple Podcasts. It's fun to read those, and we appreciate the positive reviews, and we just like that other people for some reason like listening to us talk.
For sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much again to the audience. It's been a fun ride for Ted Lasso and some of the other shows that we've done. So if you joined us from something else, feel free to check out our back catalog. We got a lot of other fun shows that we've kind of covered. So this definitely won't be the end of Team Binge. We'll find some new shows and we'll keep going. But you can also find us on your various socials, Twitter, Instagram, at Team Binge or at Team Binge Podcast to continue the conversation there. So we're almost there, Julian. One more left, my man.
One more. It's going to be the final touchdown for this show, and we'll finish it out. I have been Julian.
And I have been Tom. Until next time, everybody.